بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So we're starting this book. This book in Arabic is very, very thin. In English it comes much thinner, but it's basically a collection of the son of Sheikh Muhammad Awama. Sheikh Muhammad Awama is a great, huge muhaddith. He was originally in Saudi Arabia and I believe he's now in Turkey. Hanafi, huge scholar. And so his son, Dr. Muhyiddin, he wrote this book, which is called Min Ahadith al-Qisar lin-Nashi'at al-Sighar. Right? It's called some short Sahih Hadiths for young kids. And so if you attend some of my classes, unfortunately, I have a habit of going into lots of tangents, talking about lots of random things. And this is just a collection of hadith for parents and children to sit down. Boys, you want to sit and listen? Abdul Zaki? No? Mikhail, you want to sit and listen? Okay, well, my own kids don't want to come, as they say in English. You know all of the hadith? MashaAllah, MashaAllah, you already know the hadith. But this is just basically some short hadiths that's like a kind of entrance point. Like, what did the Prophet ﷺ talk about? Right? So it's just nice to have that kind of general exposure. So he goes through the introduction and he said, I mentioned this book, etc. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he wrote this book approximately 30 years ago, right? Abdul Razaki. Okay, so he says the first thing he starts off with is chapter 1, the virtue of knowledge, scholars, and teaching. So he's saying, you want to start, where do I even start? Then start off with a methodology, a system, a way of living where you want to learn and you want to find people to teach you. Okay, and so it says, وعن أمير المؤمنين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. It says وعن أمير المؤمنين is to make a little bit clear focus. عن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى ومن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته لدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. All right. So he starts off with a chapter on knowledge, but he talks about something else. So why did he do that? He says the leader of the believers, Abu Hafs Umar ibn Khattab, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he narrated the Prophet ﷺ said, actions are only rewarded by intentions. So we asked the question, the author put this title, why did he put this hadith? He's telling us, if you want to seek sacred knowledge, you do it for one reason. I love and I fear my Creator, and I want to find out how to worship Him. I'm not doing this because it's cool. I'm not doing this because it's interesting. I'm not doing it because maybe there's somebody in the class that I like, or this or that. My sincere reason for doing anything, why do I go to school? Why do I wash my teeth? Why do you eat your vegetables? Why do you listen to mom and dad? Why do you do any of these things? Is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want Allah to be pleased with me. So he says, actions are only rewarded based on intentions. Why did you do what you did? And a person only receives the reward for what he intended. So right now we stop and we say, why are you sitting here at 5:43 p.m.? Why are you here? Or if you're listening online right now, why are you listening to this recording? What's the point? Are you here, Fareed, because you promised somebody to teach somebody? Are you here because it's cool? Are you here because it's interesting? Or are you here because you love Allah and you fear Allah and you want other people to love Allah and to fear Allah, and you want to do something that will please Allah, and you want other people to do something to please Allah? What's your intention? That's who you are. So he says, and whoever migrates, you left Mecca and the oppression you're suffering there and the difficulty of being a believer there under non-Muslim rule, and you left your family and left your political protection and your clan who are going to protect you from thieves and protect you from people trying to beat you up at anything. And you left your wealth and your job and your family and you went to Medina, a place that you don't know, a place that you're not familiar with. You don't have relatives there. You don't have strength there. You don't have anything. You went there. Why did you go there? You did it for the sake of Allah and you did it for His Messenger. Then it's as if he traveled to Allah and His Messenger himself. And whoever migrates, you went through all of that difficulty for a worldly reason. You want to buy a house because it's fun, or to marry some woman, that's halal, why not? Then his migration is merely for whatever he migrated for, i.e., so whenever you do anything, including sitting down doing a Quran class, sitting down doing your homework, sitting down eating, sitting down, or going, you wake up in the morning, go to work, you go to school. Why do you do what you do? You got to stop and ask yourself and say, I love Allah and I want to do something that Allah loves. I fear Allah, I want to do something that will protect me from Allah's punishment. Okay, so that was the first hadith. Why do you do what you do? And then he mentions the second hadith. He says, وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال من كذب علي متعمدا فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. This he says, Abu Hurairah relates that the Messenger of Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever lies about me intentionally, then let him prepare to take his seat in the hellfire. This hadith is not only narrated by Abu Hurairah, it's narrated by at least 72 of the Sahaba. So the Prophet must have said it on many occasions, and it is a historical fact that the Prophet Muhammad said this. Therefore, this is very, very scary. So we should be very, very careful about A, quoting hadiths when we're not sure that it's a hadith, and we should be very, very careful of B, saying things about halal and haram, and this is in heaven, and this is hell, or anything about religion when you don't really know what you're talking about. So it is haram to say something that you don't know is true, or you don't think is true. So do you know that as a fact? Yes. Do you think it's most likely? Yes. Okay, you can say that then. You can say the Prophet said something because it's most likely true. That's okay. But if you're not sure because it's 50-50, right? Or you don't know what the source is, don't say it and don't pass it on. You see on social media, somebody quotes a hadith and they don't put a source. They say the Prophet said this, Prophet did this. And you don't see a source, don't share it. Don't share it because you're responsible now for that quote. And وعن عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال بلغوا عني ولو آية حدثوا عن بني إسرائيل ولا حرج. The Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As رضي الله عنه, he said, share my teachings, convey from me, share the teachings of Islam, even if it's just one ayah. So I encourage you, the Prophet said, share hadith that I talk about, share my teachings, share these things, buy a copy of this book and give it to somebody. Walau ayah, even if it's just one ayah. So, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there's nobody like him. In the Quran, it says, for example, be nice to your parents. In the Quran, it says you should forgive people. One thing, share. وَحَدِّثُوا عَنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ وَلَا حَرَجْ, and quote the stories in the Bible without reservation. What does that even mean? Right? Another version of this hadith says, and quote the children of Israel, quote the Bible, and don't believe it and don't disbelieve it. And so from this, we can categorize things into three categories, right? Three categories. There are things that 100% are true. How do you know it's 100% true? Because it's a historical fact that Prophet Muhammad said it, or you can look at it in front of you. I know I exist. I know that there's a sky. I know that I'm in America. Okay? I know that God is one. How do I know that? Because it's a historical fact that Prophet Muhammad said that. How do you know that? Because multiple independent sources, not Abu Hurairah or Abdullah ibn Amr, not one or two or three, but multiple, lots of different people, all said that the Prophet said that. And from them, lots of independent people quoted them. So it was either a conspiracy, a mass conspiracy that was pulled off on an unbelievable level, right, which is impossible, or the Prophet said one of the two things. So that's called mutawatir, something that's a historical fact, right? You know that as fact. And then there's a hadith like this. How do you know the Prophet said it? Well, Abdullah ibn Amr said that. Okay, could he be mistaken? Yeah, possibly, but very unlikely. So this is something that was what we call not mutawatir, but something that we are confident about. right? I'm confident the Prophet said these words. I don't know he said those words, but I'm confident he said those words. And there are other things that the Prophet may have said or may not have said, or Jesus may have said or may not have said. You pick up the Bible and it says Jesus said this, Moses said this, Jonah said this, Dawood said this. I don't know. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't have a real source. It's just in the Bible. It may be true. It may not be true. Right? Most hadiths are like that. Most hadiths may be true, may not be true. I don't know. So I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying it's wrong. Okay? So 3 levels. Mutawatir. I know historically that's true. It is impossible that that didn't happen. It's impossible that person didn't say those words. How do you know? Multiple independent sources. They couldn't have all got it wrong. Okay, and they're independent. They're not relying on each other. Okay, it's not like this group or that group, right? It's independent. And then you have one person or 2 people rating from 1 or 2 people, 1 or 2 people. I trust them. They're reliable. I trust them. Okay, that's reliable, but that's not I know. That's I'm pretty sure that's the case. And then Hadithu an bani Israel wala haraj. Quote incidents, stories that are in the Bible. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Right? Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. As long as it doesn't go against something else that I know, it might be true, might not. History, most of history is like that. It might be true, it might not be. Might not be. It may have happened, it may have not happened. Okay, and so these 3 levels. So this also tells us that if a hadith isn't sahih, it's still useful, right? If a hadith isn't sahih, like these hadiths are all sahih. If the hadith isn't sahih, right, and it may be right, it may be not right, that doesn't make it useless and wrong. It just means it may be true, may not be true. So somebody might quote a hadith, for example, and say, it's good to do this dua. And oh, the hadith's weak. So yeah, but he may have said it, so I'm going to say the dua, right? Or the Prophet ﷺ may have done this thing. Okay, then maybe I should do it. Okay, 1 second, please. Okay, so as we were saying, from this hadith, we can infer this 3 levels that we can break down. Fact, most likely, and useful, but not necessarily reliable. Okay? And so in our times, we often hear people breaking things into 2 categories, right or wrong. Hadith is sahih, therefore it's true. Hadith is not sahih, therefore it's false. That is incorrect. Rather, you can say a hadith or anything in the past, a verse of the Quran or a quote in history or whatever it is, not necessarily, it's either it's historical fact, because it's mutawatir, it's mass transmitted, or it's sahih, it's reliable, or it's da'if, it's not so reliable, but that's still of use, right? And that's why, for example, we look in, for example, the Sunan of Abu Dawood, the Sunan of Nasa'i or Tirmidhi, etc. They'll have sahih hadiths and weak hadiths. Why are you telling me weak hadiths? That's misguidance. It's not misguidance because a weak hadith is useful. And weak hadith is useful. Okay, and inshallah, maybe somebody could share that. There's a little YouTube recording I did right before Ramadan on this topic. It's about weak hadiths and du'as in Ramadan specifically, but it's a general idea, so we're perhaps going to share that on the group, inshallah. It's in my YouTube channel. Okay, so what's the use then of the Bible? I might look at the Bible here and there, and it might fill in some stories. Like there's a story in the Quran which doesn't have much detail, and the detail is there in the Bible. So as long as the content of the Bible is not contrary to the Quran or contrary to the Hadith, then it's not a problem. Right? You find many of the early Muslims quoting the Jews and the Christians for all sorts of things. وعن زيد بن ثابت رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال نضر الله امرأ سمع منا حديثا فحفظه حتى يبلغه غيره ورب حامل فقه إلى من هو أفقه منه ورب حامل فقه ليس بفقيه. He says Zayd ibn Thabit narrates that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, may Allah brighten the face of a person who hears a hadith from us, memorizes it, and narrates it to others. Perhaps the one who possesses understanding, the person who's carrying understanding, who's carrying that information of the religion, will deliver it to somebody who has better understanding than him. So you might know a hadith, but you don't understand what it means. Or you understand what it means, but you don't understand its fullest implications. And perhaps the one who possesses knowledge, the one who's carrying knowledge, the one who's a vehicle of knowledge, does not understand it. So this is very, very important. There are three types of scholars, roughly speaking. Three types of scholars. A scholar of Quran recital. Okay, that means they know how to recite the Quran exactly how the Prophet used to recite it. Okay, they've memorized the Quran and they've pronounced it properly. Does that mean they understand the Quran? No. Does it mean they can explain the Quran? No. Does it mean they can explain halal and haram? No. So somebody who could be good at Quran, that's one speciality. And there are other people of the Salaf or the early Muslims who their expertise was quoting hadith, like Abu Hurairah, right? Like Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan. Many great imams of hadith narration. So I'm able to quote the hadith to you, okay? And then there are other people who are able to analyze the hadith. So when I'm interested in finding out whether hadith is true or false, who do I go to? Hadith scholar. When I'm trying to find out what the hadith means, who do I go to? Fiqh scholar. Somebody who is a faqih, someone who's a Hanafi faqih, Maliki faqih, Shafi'i faqih, Hanbali faqih. Right? They know halal and haram. I don't go to a hadith scholar because that's not his job. When I'm trying to find out how to pronounce Quran, do I go to a fiqh scholar? Not necessarily. I go to a tajweed scholar, somebody who teaches Quran. So when you say so-and-so is a Maulana, so-and-so is a Sheikh, like, what is that? Are you trying to say he's good at pronouncing the Quran? Are you trying to say he's good at understanding the Quran? Or are you trying to say he's good at narrating hadith? Or he's good at understanding hadith? Not the same thing. Okay, very important thing to understand. Each of these things are different specialities, right? So tell our kids, these are three different things. You want to find out what the hadith means, whether something is halal or haram, you go to the fuqaha. You go to Hanafi faqih, Maliki faqih, Shafi faqih. I say, are you specialized in one of the four madhahib? Yes. Okay. Then is this halal or haram based on that madhab? Okay. But if you're trying to find out is this hadith sahih or not, or did the Prophet say this, or how likely, you go to a hadith scholar. And if you find it trying to how to pronounce the Quran, that's a Quran scholar. Three different things. You might be a scholar that does both, or one, or two, or all three. It's possible, right? Like Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Ibn Abbas was a great scholar. He had a madhab of fiqh that followed him. Okay, Zayd ibn Thabit, he has a madhab. People followed him, right? And there's others, for example, like Sayyidina Anas. He narrates hadiths, but do we quote him in fiqh? I don't remember him ever quoting him in fiqh. Quote him in hadith. And I've never seen him say, this is halal, this is haram, because that's not his job. That wasn't his expertise. Does that make sense to everybody? Mustafa, Ilham, and Asif, make sense? Right? So if you have the book, just write a little note. Because inshallah, in 20 years, you'll come back to this book. And inshallah, you'll all be shuyukh and you'll be explaining this hadith. Just put a little note here and say, see the introduction to Ilal of Hadith by Ali al-Madini. But see introduction, Ilal Hadith, Ilal of Ali al-Madini. Okay? And another book as well, put see Shurut al-A'imma. Shurut al-A'imma by Ibn Mandah. And who knows, you come back to this note that you wrote 20 years ago and say, SubhanAllah, why did I write that? And you'll find wonders. Okay? People often, you think he's a sheikh in hadith, but he's not a sheikh in hadith, he's a sheikh in fiqh. It's two different specialities. Or he's going to quote a hadith, and he's going to quote a whole book of hadith, and he's going to give you halal haram. So, well, is that your speciality? That's not your speciality. Okay? So some of the early Muslims, there were those who were good at fiqh, and those who were good at hadith, and those who are good at hadith, and those who are good at Quran. And they're not the same people. For example, we all recite Hafs and Asim, correct? Right? You pick up your Mus'haf, it's called Qiraat Hafs and Asim, right? Everyone's heard of that word, Hafs and Asim, right? When you get a normal standard Mus'haf that's not, for example, from North Africa, it's going to be Hafs and Asim, right? So Hafs is not a good hadith narrator. So why are you reciting Quran based on his recital then? Because he's good at reciting Quran. His teacher, Asim ibn Abi Najud, is okay in hadith, fantastic in Quran, right? So they're not the same thing. Okay. So right on the side, see ilal hadith or intro. Ilal hadith Ali al-Madini. You might write this note today. You'll be like, I have no idea who Ali al-Madini is. Well, he's a guy who owns a shop from Medina. I don't know. You'll find out who he is, inshallah, later on when you're all scholars, inshallah. Right? And Ali al-Madini plus shurut al-Imma ibn Manda. Okay? And it will make sense later on, inshallah. How many a time have I written notes that I don't understand? The sheikh's mentioned a word, I don't even understand what that means. I write it down and way later, like, subhanallah. Right? I was once in a class and this sheikh was teaching this class before my class. And he said, Al-balaghatu hiya al-fasl wal-wasl. He said, rhetoric is fasl and wasl. I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that means. I don't even know what the science of rhetoric is. What's fasl and wasl? Today, like, subhanallah, every single page of the Quran, you can talk about that. Every single page of every single ayah of the Quran, you can talk about it. But I didn't understand back then. So you just wrote it down. It was stuck in my head. Like, I don't know what that is. Right? So important concepts. Okay. Then it says, وعن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. They said, Anas ibn Malik relates that the Prophet ﷺ said, seeking knowledge is an obligation. You have to seek knowledge. You have to sit down and make sure your tajweed is correct. You have to try and understand Arabic. You have to sit down and learn how to pray, how to fast, how to make wudu, how to buy a house, how to sell it, how to do a contract, how to get married, what is halal and what is haram. You need to work out these things because otherwise you run around doing crazy stuff and you don't know what's going on. So you have to seek knowledge. وعن معاوية بن أبي سفيان رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من يرد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever Allah intends good for, what is the sign that Allah wants to guide you and increase your iman and make you a better person? يفقهه في الدين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him deep understanding of the religion. He understands halal and haram. He understands how to live life as a religious Muslim, as opposed to somebody who is confused. They don't know what to do. Should I ask so-and-so? Should I ask so-and-so? It's just confusing. I don't have a system to go by. Or somebody who has knowledge, you know how to navigate scholars. You might not agree with the scholar, but you know how to navigate him. Okay, so that's a very important thing. How do I navigate this world? Oh, so-and-so, I can use this scholar for this. I can use that scholar for that. This is where I'm going to go here. This book will kind of do this kind of thing. I don't need to know everything. You need to know how the system works. So you need to study deen. Very important. And so what is a sign that you know that Allah loves you and wants you to be guided is that you take the time to study fiqh. And fiqh specifically, unlike this text, it's not just hadith. Fiqh specifically, my genuine advice to every single Muslim is to sit down and have a 1 hour class of fiqh for the rest of your life, every week. Find somebody who specializes in one of the four madhahib and say, please, Sheikh, can you teach me? I want to have a class once a week. You see the group class, one-on-one class, doesn't matter. The point is you sit down and do that 1 hour a week for the rest of your life. And then when you on Yawm al-Qiyamah, when you say Allah, when you meet Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, why did you do this haram thing? You're like, yeah, Allah, honestly, I tried my best to find out what was halal and haram, and subhanAllah, that slipped me by. I'm sorry. As opposed to, I never attended any classes in fiqh. I didn't even know why that would be halal or haram or anything. And I ended up doing that dumb thing. And subhanAllah, I did something wrong. So you're not expected to know everything. Nobody knows everything. But you are expected to take the means. And so with your Quran, study Quran until you can make sure you recite Quran properly. Do some Arabic until you know the basics of Arabic. Study some seerah so you know how to read seerah, what seerah about, how does it work, right? Study a bit of tafsir so you know what's going on, know some how to kind of things maybe in English to refer to. But fiqh, make sure you're doing on a regular basis, every week or a class, you're attending a class in fiqh so that you don't miss things. Because otherwise something's going to come in your life like, man, why did I do that? Such an obvious discussion and I missed it out, right? So make sure you know what's going on. Otherwise, you end up doing crazy things, and a lot of otherwise religious people do a lot of crazy things. Okay. And then he said, عن سعد بن أبي وقاص رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال فضل علمي أحب إلي من فضل العبادة وخير دينكم الورع. So he says Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, right, the first Sahabi to shoot an arrow in jihad, he said, the virtue of knowledge, or you could say knowing more, is more beloved to me than the virtue of worship, or you could say doing more worship. Okay? And so you have to do the fard, you have to pray your 5 daily prayers, you have to fast Ramadan, you have to do the basic things. But what is better? Somebody who prays a lot or somebody who knows a lot? Or somebody who goes on Hajj every year, or somebody, for example, who goes on Hajj and then spends time, for example, learning, spends time traveling to seek sacred knowledge, etc. What's the best thing? The learning. Why? Because learning benefits you and benefits other people, whereas your worship only benefits you. And if you don't know how to worship properly, you run around doing crazy things. Okay, you end up doing things that don't make sense. You prioritize things that are not a priority. Allah doesn't want you to do that. You say, well, I didn't know. So, well, you should learn how to worship Allah so that you can worship Allah properly. Right? Learn how to worship Allah. Learn how Hadith works so that you don't get confused when somebody quotes a Hadith and you don't understand how they're quoting it. Learn how the Quran was preserved so that when somebody comes along and questions something, you don't get confused. Learn a little bit about history, of Islamic history, so that you can say, yeah, I understand where things are. Right? We're not asking, the deen is not about becoming a scholar. Right? So the point of being a scholar is to apply it. So as long as you apply it, you're a scholar. But you need to have a basic understanding of things so that you don't get confused. Right? Like a basic education. Right? So that's more important than doing extra good deeds. Once you have that basic education, then alhamdulillah, you can go and do as much ibadah as you want. And because you're going to have the right balance, you're going to have the right prioritization, and you're going to do it in the right way. Right? I give you an example, classic example. Somebody, mashallah, they pray a lot. But they don't know how to make wusul. What's the point in praying if you don't know how to make wusul? They don't know when to make wusul. Or they don't know what they can do or what they can't do when they need to make wusul. What's the point? Or somebody, for example, they pray lots of prayers and they wipe on thin socks. Can you wipe on thin socks? Oh, I don't know. You should find out, Habibi. You should go and find out if it's valid or not to wipe on thin socks. Does that count or does not count? Go and ask the fuqaha. Go and ask those Malikis, go and ask those Shafis, go and ask those Hanbalis, go and ask those Hanafis. Say, can I wipe on thin socks that I might wear, for example, on my office clothes? Will you go and pray 1,000 rak'ahs? Go and find out what's going on. And so the virtue of knowledge is more beloved to me than the virtue of worship. And the best of your religion is scrupulousness. It's better to be careful than to do extra things, right? It's better to focus. Now, I'll give you a practical example. Should I memorize more Quran or should I review more Quran? I've memorized X amount and sometimes I'm forgetting surahs. Okay? Some ulama, they say it's actually sinful to forget a surah that you've memorized. Some ulama, they say that. They say it's actually a major sin. Not all of them, but some ulama say that. So, should I memorize a new surah or should I review old surahs? If I memorize new, then I'm doing something good. If I'm reviewing old, I'm saving my neck. So what is more important? Doing extra good things or being more careful? If I pray tahajjud, it's a good deed. But if I pray tahajjud, I might be harming my body because I need to rest. So I'm confused. Should I push myself and ignore the rest that my body needs? Or should I pray tahajjud because it's a sunnah? Okay, if you're genuinely concerned that you're going to harm yourself, you should not be praying tahajjud because it might be sinful. Allah might be cursing you while you're praying. Right? Should I promise my friend to do more things that I don't have to do, or should I guarantee that I actually fulfill my promises that I have made? Should I make sure that I'm doing the courses that I'm studying at college properly, or should I add to my plate because it's more good than that? What is it? Be careful. You made a promise to somebody, keep it. You have a promise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fulfill it. Right? Don't be that person on Judgment Day who did something haram. You can be that person on Judgment Day who missed the sunnah. It's not the end of the world. But you are the person who said you harmed your body. You spread yourself too thin and you harmed your family. You spread yourself too thin and you broke a promise that you had, that you were going to take that course and do the homework or whatever it is, and you didn't because you spread yourself too thin. Right? We had a kid in the school during Ramadan. He missed a day of school because he's praying tahajjud. Okay, what's the point of missing school? Right? That's not fair. You made a promise to turn up at school. Right? And so many people, they stretch the shaitan comes to them and tells them, do lots of extra things, when in reality, their priority is something else. So fiqh al-awlawiyat, knowing your priorities is very important. How would I find out what my priorities are? Understand the deen. And you'll understand where your priorities are. I'm so confused. I'm getting pulled this way and pulled that way. No. Be pulled in one way. Being pulled towards Allah. And through that, that's how you're going to do your studies. Through that, that's how you're going to raise your kids. And through that, that's how you're going to navigate in-laws. And through that, that's how you're going to navigate your finances. And through that, through one thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what you need to know is say, oh Allah, please tell me what you want me to do with my 24 hours. Do you want me to sleep? Do you want me to rest? Do you want me to chill out? Do you want me to do worship? Do you want me to do Quran? Do you want me to do Hadith, Arabic? I don't know. So you, oh Allah, you tell me what my priorities are. How do you find out? You need knowledge to find out how you should prioritize and organize your life. And always be careful if it's an issue of doing something extra versus doing something haram, always be careful of doing something haram. Much more important. May Allah forgive us. Abu Darda narrates that the Prophet ﷺ said, the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. They are the people who inherit prophethood. Okay? And so that's why we have to learn so that we can inherit it. Now, just because you know, does that make you an inheritor? No. Because the Prophet didn't simply know, the Prophet knew and applied. He knew the Quran and he applied the Quran. He knew the Hadith, he was the Hadith, and he applied it. He didn't just understand Arabic grammar, for example. He understood Arabic grammar, how it applied to the Quran and what it meant in terms of what he should be doing right now. So being a scholar does not mean that you know something. Being a scholar is that you know and you apply it, right? Al-alim, al-amil, one who knows and applies, as opposed to, hey, you're not doing it. So right now, you say, hey, Sheikh Farid, hang on a minute. Didn't you just miss Asr in the masjid? So, yeah, I did. Okay, why'd you do that then? That's not sunnah. So, yeah, it is sunnah. Why? Well, because I can't teach his class otherwise. So I'm saying Allah doesn't want me to pray Asr in the masjid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to pray Asr at home. Why? So that I can teach his class. Because why? Allah wants me to teach his class more than he wants me to be in the masjid. As opposed to, oh, it's only sunnah. Right? Somebody says it's only sunnah, that's not an alim. Why did you miss the sunnah? Ah, it's only sunnah. That's not right. That's horrible. That's crazy. Right? So somebody who doesn't want to do the best possible thing or isn't trying to do the best possible thing, that's not a scholar. A scholar is, I learn to find out what does Allah want me to do, and I'm honestly trying my best to do it. Yeah, I fall short, but I'm honestly trying to prioritize prioritize things properly. As opposed to, it's only sunnah. There's difference of agreement on it. Right? Al-wara, being careful and being a true heir of the Prophet ﷺ means that you know and you apply, as opposed to you have lots of facts in your head. Nobody cares about the facts in your head, with all due respect. Care about the facts in your head that translate into how you live your life. That's what we're interested in. وعن أبي أمامة الباهلي رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال فضل العالم على العابد كفضلي على أدناكم. It says the comparison of the merit of a scholar over somebody who simply worships is like my virtue over the least of you. So if you compare Prophet Muhammad to the least of the Ummah of Muhammad, that's like the comparison of somebody who knows how the deen works and applies it properly, or somebody who just simply does lots of worship. Right? An industrious fool. An industrious fool. Somebody who like really tries to do lots of things, but it's all wrong. Right? You should know you have to be an industrious alim, and just so you know what is right, and then you do lots of things, as opposed to, I don't even know what the priorities are. I don't even know how Allah wants you to worship, but this is all cool. I'm just doing stuff, right? I'm just doing things. You shouldn't be like that. You should have priority list. How do you get that priority list? Through knowledge. وعن أبي أمامة الباهلي رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إن الله وملائكته وأهل السماوات والأرض حتى النملة في جحرها وحتى الحوت ليصلون على معلم الناس الخير. He said that the Prophet ﷺ said, truly Allah and his angels and all the inhabitants of the heavens and all the inhabitants on earth, even the ant in its hole and even the fish, they send blessings on the one who teaches people goodness. So this is a huge thing to do, because all right, and we're going to see other things, and so we need to know and apply and share. Know, apply and share. And so the universe loves you, or the universe hates you. The universe loves you, and the ground that you walk on loves you, and the plant that you just walk past loves you, and the oxygen just went into your lungs loves you when you know what Allah wants you to do and you're generally trying your best to do it. And the universe hates you and detests you when you neither know or you know but you don't apply. وعن جرير بن عبد الله البجلي رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال من سن في الإسلام سنة حسنة فله أجرها وأجر من عمل بها بعده من غير أن ينقص من أجورهم شيء. He said, whoever initiates a good action, like Taraweeh. Originally, the Prophet ﷺ, he just prayed at night, right, in Ramadan. Right, he just prayed at night in Ramadan. And then they started leading some people, and then the Prophet ﷺ was concerned that people wouldn't think that Taraweeh has obligatory, so he left that. And then people would just pray at night, different numbers, different groups, etc. In the time of Sayyidina Umar, he came along, he said, you know what? We need to have everybody praying together. So he gathered everybody to pray together. And some narrations, they had them praying 20 rakats, right? And so Sayyidina Umar, he saw these people praying all together, and he said, Ni'matul bid'atu hadhihi. What a wonderful bid'ah this is, right? So from him on, people started praying Taraweeh in one jama'ah, in one group. And he said, this is something good. So this is an example of something, a sunnah hasana fil Islam. He says, whoever initiates a good action in Islam will attain the reward of it, and the reward of whoever performs the action thereafter without decreasing their reward at all. Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu, he whenever he made wudu, day or night, he would pray 2 rakahs after it. And so the Prophet ﷺ asked him, said, I've seen a vision of you walking in paradise, and I've heard your footsteps in paradise. He says, what have you done? He says, I don't know, but every single time I make wudu, I pray 2 rakahs after it. So he invented this sunnah of praying 2 rakahs after wudu. And so anybody who does it after him gets that reward. Right? One of the Sahaba was praying, and in the middle of the prayer, he comes out of ruku, he says, Sami Allah, hamda rabbana lakal hamd, hamdan kathiran, tayyiban, mubarakan fih. Right? He came with this dua. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, who said that dua? And they were all scared. Maybe I've done something wrong. Who said that dua? Who said that? All praise be to Allah, a praising that is beautiful and wholesome and blessed. Who said that? Somebody said they were, gingerly put his hand up and said, yeah, it was me. And they said, Subhanallah, I saw such and such a number of angels all rushing to record what you did. So he invented that dua, right? And so when you invent something good that fits with the spirit and the fiqh of Islam, then it's totally fine. And it's a bid'ah hasana, it's a good thing. But if you do something that conforms to something that's makruh or confirms something haram in the deen, then you've created a new type of haram. So in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, marijuana wasn't widespread, but alcohol was. So you come along and you introduce marijuana to the Muslim world, right? Now there's this new type of different kind of intoxication. So this is a new type of bid'ah. It fits the same haram of drinking alcohol, but it's different, right? At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were women who go, who would dress inappropriately, show off. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke about at the end of time, there were these things. So now you have a new way of doing that. Put them on a screen. Oh, that wasn't there before. That wasn't there before. Okay, but now you have a picture of yourself on Instagram that's not appropriate. But it's the same, but different. It's a new way of doing the same haram. So this is also a bid'ah. So a bid'ah, there are new things that's either good or new things that are bad, right? And by default, the Prophet used the word bid'ah for bad things, but it doesn't literally mean every single new thing is bad, because it could be like this. It could be a sunnah hasana or a bid'ah hasana that fits the general picture of the deen. So whoever initiates a good action in Islam will obtain the reward of it and the reward of whomever performs the action thereafter without decreasing their reward. So set the good example. Tell your big brothers, big sisters, show your little brothers and little sisters how to do a good thing. My brother, he told me probably 23 years ago, 24 years ago, he said, after Fajr and after Maghrib, you should say, Allahumma ajirni min al-nar, 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 Allahumma ajirni min al-nar. He said, the Prophet, that the Sunnah after Fajr and after Maghrib to say, oh Allah, protect me from the hellfire 7 times. Now he gets a reward every single time I do it. So big brothers and big sisters, if you're listening to this, for your parents, and you're telling your big brothers and sisters, set the good example for your little brothers and sisters, because you're going to get their reward. They'll get their reward, but you get the reward too. ومن سن في الإسلام سنة سيئة كان عليه وزرها ووزر من عمل بها من بعده I should say من بعده من عمل بها من بعده, not من بعده. وزر من عمل بها من بعده, من غير أن ينقص من أوزارهم شيء. He says, and somebody who sets a bad example, you're the one who introduced this bad app or this bad TV thing or this bad way of sharing music or the bad way of whatever it is, any kind of bad thing. You get the sin and they get the sin. So don't do it. Don't be that person who shared that cuss word with all the little kids. Don't be that person who introduced whatever it was. And if you did, make tawbah. So there's a little question here on the group. Sister Ilham, do you mind if I answer your question in the group? Because you direct message me. Is that okay?
Yes, totally fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Assalamu alaikum. We didn't have all the resources to give our children complete Fard al-Ain knowledge before puberty, but now praying according to the thought of to a school of thought and seerah and some Quran? Are there some resources or action we can take now? Yeah, so just learn with them. That's what I do. Just sit and do a class with them. So sit to get a class. Seekers Guidance has all sorts of classes. There's other websites. Irshad has Hanafi fiqh classes. There's many things. And just sit and do it with them. Family. Like we do this all together and learn fiqh together. It's not a problem, right? And in fact, you're showing them the best example. You say, this is what mommy and daddy did wrong, and this is how mommy and daddy change. Mommy and daddy are not perfect, and this is what we do when we don't do things that are perfect. So then they know later on, oh yeah, when you do the wrong thing, you change together. And look, mommy and daddy weren't too proud or too stubborn or too, it was like, no, we just work on it together, right? It seems like from what you said, Zaytuna most likely wouldn't be that place, especially since it now takes so much time. What about Maqasid? Maqasid is a very good example place, right? Maqasid is a very good place, I think. And there's many places, right? But Maqasid, I think, is a good option. Zaytuna is for somebody who wants a degree. So I need a degree. Okay, I need a liberal arts degree. So that's what it is. And so it's an Islamic liberal arts degree, right? So it is not the same as studying the deen. So you want to go and study deen, there's many things you can do, but I need a piece of paper, okay? And here's a piece of paper. This is teach you how to read, how to write, how to think critically, etc. And it's a piece of paper. No. So it serves a different purpose. وعن أبي مسعود الأنصاري رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال من دل على خير فله مثل أجر فاعله. The Prophet said, whoever indicates another to do good, you teach somebody a sunnah, teach somebody to tell something good, you encourage your little brother to speak the truth. Let's both go and tell mama that we stole it. Let's both go and tell daddy that we took this thing from him. Right? Then you get the reward of that person. So be the one who is helping each other do the good, not the one helping each other do the bad. Inshallah, we're just going to go another 5 minutes perhaps. وعن تميم الداري رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال الدين النصيحة. قلنا لمن؟ قال لله ولكتابه ولرسوله ولأمة المسلمين وعامتهم. He said, religion is sincere concern, generally wishing the best and doing well by other people. Okay, what does it mean to do well by other people? Like, for whom? It says for Allah, i.e., like, what does it mean to do well by Allah? Like, listen to Allah and try and follow what Allah wants you to do, and His book and His messenger, and to wish well and to do well by the leaders of the Muslims and the average Muslims. So you generally want good for everybody, and you give genuine advice, and you do things for their benefit as opposed to trying to benefit from the situation. And the notes has more distance explanation there. And he says, وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال من سئل عن علم ثم كتمه ألجم يوم القيامة بلجام من نار. So Abu Hurairah narrates the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, whoever is asked about Islamic knowledge, is there a hadith on this? Yes, there is. Okay, then tell me. No. Is this sunnah? Yes. Okay, can you tell me then? No. Can you show me how to make wudu? No. Is this halal or haram? I know the answer, I'm not going to tell you. Haram. This person, what? Allah will bridle them on the day of rising from with a bridle, right? Like a reins of fire. Right? May Allah protect us. Right? Just like their mouth was held back in the dunya, their mouth will be held back with fire on Judgment Day. Now, does that mean you have to answer a question even if you don't know the answer? No, it is haram to answer the question if you don't know the answer. So you teach your kids and you teach your family, even if it seems obvious, just like, I don't know. Let's ask somebody. I don't know. Let's ask somebody, right? Why am I Shafi? I'm Shafi because my dad was Hanafi and he wasn't sure that he'd teach us properly. So he sent us to somebody else who had a bit more knowledge than me. He wasn't a scholar, but he had a bit more knowledge, right? So that's why I'm Shafi, because my dad taught us to not speak when he didn't know, okay? As opposed to, you know the answer, you don't share with other people, okay? And so by default, a scholar should refer to somebody who's more knowledgeable than themselves. They say, I don't know the answer, but go to or ask so and so first. But what if so and so is not available and you are available? Then you have to answer that question. You cannot hold it back. وعن عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إن الله لا يقبض العلم انتزاعا ينتزعه من الناس ولكن يقبض العلم بقبض العلماء حتى إذا لم يترك عالما اتخذ الناس رؤوسا جهالا فسئلوا فافتوا بغير علم فضلوا وأضلوا. Right? So Abdullah bin Amr relates that the Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, Allah does not seize or will not seize knowledge by merely snatching it from people. So there's a scholar and he walks down the street and suddenly doesn't know something. He's a hafiz of the Quran and suddenly he doesn't know it. That's not how it works. Rather, he seizes knowledge by seizing the scholars. This is a fundamental thing. Just because you have an app or just because you have a book, that does not mean you have knowledge. You need a scholar to open this book for you and to explain to you how to use this book. You need to be trained. You need to be initiated. So this is the concept of talaqqi. Talaqqi is you receive knowledge. You study fiqh, somebody who studied fiqh from the Prophet ﷺ, like that. You study tajweed from somebody who studied tajweed, who studies tajweed from the Prophet ﷺ. That's how it works. Okay? And so the deen disappears with the disappearance of the ulama, even if all the books are there. Rather, he seizes knowledge by seizing scholars until when he doesn't leave a single scholar behind, then people will take the ignorant as leaders. And this is the majority today. The default today is like this, is that people do not refer to scholars, they refer to interesting people, somebody who is famous, somebody who's online. They're going to ask him a question. If I ask him and he's famous and he answers me, that's good enough for me. Is he a scholar? No. Right? And sometimes it's obvious to the layman and sometimes it's not. If it's obvious that this person is a layman, you're at fault. You know he's not a scholar. Why do you ask him? And sometimes it's not, in which case it's not your fault. I assumed he was a scholar. That's why he was there. Right? I went to a masjid and somebody led a prayer and then he asked him a question and he told me this. I didn't know, he didn't know. Well, how am I supposed to know who knows and who doesn't? If I can't go to a mosque and ask the Maulana or ask the Imam. Right? So sometimes you're not responsible as a layman, but the scholars are responsible to tell people this person knows and this person doesn't know. Right? So in tajweed, you say, what am I asking this person? You're asking them a question on fiqh, you're asking a question of Arabic language, you're asking a question of aqidah. You say, are you trained in this thing? Is this your speciality? Right? And so there are many people who are jack of all trades, masters of none. They're not trained in any specific thing. They're just generally educated. That means they're not specialized in anything and they can be very, very harmful. Right? And so they should be the person who is sharing general ideas as opposed to answering specific things. Right? So for example, I have a Q&A group and it says Shafi fiqh. Someone asks, within all four madhahib, what's the answer here? Like, I'm not a specialist in all four madhahib. In fact, nobody's specialist in all four madhahib. So if somebody says these are the four madhahib and I know them all in detail, inside out, back to front, they're a liar. Because you don't know that. Somebody said, I'm specialized in this thing and I can answer authoritatively on this. This is the answer on this. They will be asked questions and they will issue religious verdicts, fatwa, without knowledge. Either they know they don't have knowledge or they don't know they don't have knowledge, but they just answer stuff. And then crazy things happen. Right? YouTube Islam, popular Islam, whatever is popular, that's what we're going to go, as opposed to seeking sacred knowledge. And it's not difficult because when you start seeking sacred knowledge within a very short time, you will start to realize what's going on, who knows and who doesn't. Just like if you're a nurse and you work with a doctor, in a very short time, you can find out if this guy's actually a surgeon or not. You have to be a surgeon to know who's a surgeon. Right? It's not that difficult. They will be misled and will misguide others. Right? The sign of the end of time. So we have to make sure when you're asking a fiqh question, you ask from somebody who is specialist in one of the four madhahib, because the four madhahib are the summary of the fiqh of the Salaf, of the early Muslims. And so you know that your fiqh is going back to the early Muslims, going back to the Prophet, as opposed to somebody's interpretation of a hadith and somebody's interpretation of a verse. Right? So you have a system there as opposed to an individual. وعن ثوبان مولى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إنما أخاف على أمتي الأئمة المضلين. Says the Thoban, the bondsman of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I am especially afraid for my ummah, whom? Leaders who misguide. Leaders who misguide, i.e. religious leaders or political leaders who send people astray because they're very scary, right? So one of the most dangerous people you can have is a sheikh, because he can change the deen for you and change your reality for you. So that's why we have to be educated in order to understand the deen, and you can sift very quickly. After that, you can sift very easily between who knows and who doesn't know. It's not that difficult. Okay, so chapter 2, inshallah, we'll continue next week. It says, adhering to good deeds, adhering to the Muslim community, and explaining that the Islam practice of is gradual. Okay, inshallah, I'll come to that next week. So inshallah ta'ala, we hope and dream that we've how many hadiths have we done? Doesn't have a number here. Oh, 15 hadiths, right? So 15 of 300 is 1/20th, right? 1/20th of the book. So inshallah ta'ala, bit by bit, we'll have less commentary because most hadiths are simple. And inshallah ta'ala, we'll get through this book very soon. Inshallah ta'ala, subhanallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.